it was not this thing that I had built into my head that it was going to be this fulfillment of my internal reality that I'm going to get validated. Someone's going to pat me on the back and be like, "Here you go, Aaron, it's going to be fine." That was going to have to come from somebody else or from something else, from a new paradigm, right? And when you make that transition, it took me like a year to really accept that, or like 6 months to a year to really accept that jiu-jitsu was not the thing for me. This, by the way, was after I trained 6 to 8 hours a day in total of 6, 7 years, So this was not
Yeah.
just like a cool kind of fun hobby. This is something that I was really gearing up to do for the rest of my life. So to bring that broadly back to this paradigm shift in, you got all your ducks in a row, but then suddenly this new paradigm comes knocking out of a necessity because you have this confusion. You have a confusion that you don't know. You thought this was going to be the thing to fulfill you, the thing to allow you to become that person that you wanted to become, but it's not. There's something deeper. Now you have a choice to either stay at that paradigm, to stay in the same level, but also stay with the same confusion, right? I shouldn't have really used the word level there because it implies that, like I said, one is better than the other. But it just means if you stay at that paradigm, you're never going to answer that question which you have, which is what is actually going to make me happy? How do I actually just become okay with who I am?
Today I have a really exciting guest, someone that's a real expert when it comes to hypnotherapy, human development, and working with the mind in a way that creates absolute liberation for his clients. And this is someone that's a great friend of mine. He's been really in the trenches with me as we learn from all of our different mentors, living with a hypnotherapist and a Buddhist nun for 2 years, absorbing everything that they knew and doing hours and hours of hypnotherapy meditation every single day. And so I would like to invite and share with you all Mr. Aaron Zarita. I'm going to get into it now. What is it that you do and how are you showing up in the world right now?
So what I do is similar to what you do, but it's a little bit of a different lean. I run a channel. My business is called Self-Actualization Systems, which is how do we plug shadow work? How do we plug unconscious healing in a very practical, efficient way without sacrificing all of the nuance and the depth that is needed if someone is really taking their inner world, the subjective world, seriously, right? So we're not trying to go into the full kind of paradigm which a lot of places have, which is about, oh yeah, the external doesn't matter. We're just everything's on the internal, all that kind of stuff, which is very well meaning, but most of the people who are probably interested in this podcast or interested in me, interested in you, can see the limitations in that because, well, what even is this boundary anywhere between external and internal? Why can't we just include everything together? Whilst also still having all of that, like I said, usefulness of viewing the internal world as something which is highly practical because the only person that you have to live with every single day is yourself. So we need to make sure that relationship is good. And also, if we have that good relationship, if things that are high leverage for us, but don't require that much friction for us to do, just over a compound interest over a time period, over a long time horizon, we're just going to be able to do the things that we want to do that are aligned with us, that are authentic with us, much, much easier. So it has a real practical payoff in the long term. So we're combining all of that whilst still not getting lost in the shadow work, not getting lost in the healing and the endless processing, which is why I called it self-actualization systems before it was called unconscious flow, which in some ways does a better job of seeing where I'm coming from. But self-actualization systems is just a much better term, I find, for including everything, including the meditation, not
Mm,
just for meditation's sake, but also for developing the skills that we develop during meditation, having shadow work as well, and then also having the right meta systems or big picture systems for understanding how we can leverage our growth, not hack, but leverage our growth so that we become the person that we actually want to be. Not just so that we can learn loads of systems,
yeah,
because it's fun, it's interesting, and we're a nerd like I am, right? But so we can actually have and see that difference in the outside world, you know.
yeah. I love hearing that. And what I'm curious about is you kind of spoke on that going beyond just healing internal work, right? And going beyond the boundary of internal and external. And then how
Yeah,
that showed up and even how you're naming what you do from unconscious flow, if I had it correctly, to
yeah,
self-actualization systems. And
hmm
I'm curious because I know just from actually being a friend of yours, knowing you, that this didn't come from just a business perspective, but from your own personal experience moving through and transforming from that world into a more integrated whole. And
yeah.
so I suppose the curiosity is, were there moments where that just clicked for you, where you just saw beyond that boundary? And what was that like?
So it depends how far you want me to go back, right? So I think there's whenever you see past the boundary, it always comes in phases, if I'm understanding your question correctly,
Mm.
which is the first time you're kind of like stuck in your, oh, I just want to be more productive, or I just want to be this, I just want to be that, right? You're stuck in that kind of thing, and then you get a glimpse of, oh, but what happens if I stop stressing about this and I can see the whole picture? I can see, oh, but how can I? It's not just about becoming more productive in this, but maybe I'm doing this thing over here, which is causing me all this stress and it's affecting all these different areas. But then it's so complex, it's so expansive that you can't really hold it. You just kind of have to, you're like, oh, wait, it's like this, and you go back to doing whatever you're doing. So I would say it kind of comes in stages, you know. So don't rush yourself, but be open to having that experience. Be open to maybe this paradigm that you're in right now isn't the end all be all, right? As long as there's always a flexibility, there's always an openness. I'm not sure if this is your question, but you can never really get stuck. That transformation process might happen a bit slower, but it's still going to happen for you, right?
Yeah.
What was it like for you out of interest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's almost like you just see a greater whole, but what you thought was whole was actually not, right? You're
Yeah.
almost it's almost like you're in a tunnel,
Mhm.
right? And then you just almost step back a little bit and you see there's actually more space
Yeah.
here. And
Yeah.
it can be so exciting, especially when you get so much success from one paradigm. You're like, it's just all internal. And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, wait, oh, it can be a little bit scary. I don't know
Yeah.
if you experienced that because you're like, oh, because you kind of go from a master to a little bit of a student again.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens all the time.
But then what's so exciting is you're able to play more with something new.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is actually as I'm sharing this, that process of student master is also something that I'm getting curious about, especially for you, because I know that you went through that in a couple of different paradigms, both with this, but
hmm
also with your jujitsu journey in a few
Oh,
other
yeah.
areas.
The
And so
jiu-jitsu journey.
yeah, I'm wondering about your experience with that kind of student master, the opening of whole
Yeah.
and the evolution.
Yeah. So one of our big mentors that we both shared, Pierre de Souza, who we can obviously talk about, but there's no way of finding him on the internet. So good luck, guys.
This is true. He's
Yeah,
literally
good luck.
hidden.
Yeah, he's hidden from the outside world. But he told me really early in our journey, or I'm not sure if he said it to you, but he definitely, if he didn't say it outright, it was definitely implied. But getting mastery in like lots of different areas always pays off in the long time. And I think it's precisely because of this thing that we're talking about. Because that switch of, I've got everything, I've got my ducks all, what is the phrase? I got my ducks all in order. I got my
Got my
eyes
ducks in a row. Is that it?
yeah,
I
got my
think
ducks
so.
in a row, got my T's crossed, got my I's dotted, right? In this paradigm, I can achieve this, I can do this, I'm making this much money. I've got this girlfriend or boyfriend, you know, who ticked all of these boxes that I wanted when I was a kid. I've got you know, good connections, social standing, you know, you're in this kind of paradigm and it's all comfortable for you. but then there's the next paradigm, which is calling you, right? And when we say paradigm, it's not necessarily in terms of one is better than the other. It just means that one solves a more complex problem than the one before. So to put that in a bit more plain English, right? If we're in a paradigm which we can just colloquially call the achiever paradigm, and we've gotten all the achievements, and part of the reason why we go so deeply into that paradigm is because we think that those achievements are something more than they are. They're going to give us something more than they are. So an example from my journey is I thought that when I competed at the World Champions, the World Championships, finally, I would be like, oh wow, this is jiu-jitsu, this is amazing, this is exactly what I want. So I ended up spending so much money to get there, having to take money from people like Pierre. I wasn't even working with him at the time, but I just sent him a message, hey man, I'm going to the World Championships. And it's a bit strange. I used to work with you before. Do you have any money? And he sent me like 600 euro,
Wow.
which I
I
always,
didn't know he
yeah,
did that.
yeah. I keep on forgetting, but it's something that he did, right? He was like, yeah, sure, here you go. Um, and and all this time, I trained like crazy. And I was like, wow, I'm at the World Championships finally. I wasn't black belt, I was just a purple belt, which is still a high level for the World Championships. And I got there, felt the best I ever did, competed pretty well. Just made like a little silly slip up mistake, Also my first time being at that event, so it was whatever. And nothing had changed. It was still the same as what I would experience at a leisure center in some random place in the UK. Same excitement level, same everything. It was not this thing that I had built into my head that it was going to be this fulfillment of my internal reality, that I'm going to get validated. Someone's going to pat me on the back and be like, "Here you go, Aaron, but it's going to be fine." That was going to have to come from somebody else or from something else, from a new paradigm, right? And when you make that transition, it took me like a year to really accept that, or like 6 months to a year to really accept that jiu-jitsu was not the thing for me. This, by the way, was after I trained 6 to 8 hours a day in total of 6, 7 years, So this was not
Yeah.
just like a cool kind of fun hobby. This is something that I was really gearing up to do for the rest of my life. So to bring that broadly back to this paradigm shift in, you got all your ducks in a row, but then suddenly this new paradigm comes knocking out of a necessity because you have this confusion. You have a confusion that you don't know. You thought this was going to be the thing to fulfill you, the thing to allow you to become that person that you wanted to become, but it's not. There's something deeper. Now you have a choice to either stay at that paradigm, to stay in the same level, but also stay with the same confusion, right? I shouldn't have really used the word level there because it implies that, like I said, one is better than the other. But it just means if you stay at that paradigm, you're never going to answer that question which you have, which is what is actually going to make me happy? How do I actually just become okay with who I am?
Yeah.
But in order to move to that paradigm, you have to, it's almost like you said, starting from zero again.
Yeah.
Starting from, oh wait, I had all of this mastery over here, but now in order to think in this new way, to understand myself in a new way, to also move in the world in this new way, I have to accept that there are some ducks that are not in the row, and I have to go and catch them,
Some
you
new
know?
ducks.
Maybe I have to jump into the cold water, the cold lake, which is mucky and, has low, it's not exactly the cleanest. Very specific metaphor because I'm thinking of a specific lake in Victoria Park in England, right, where there's ducks in it. So maybe you might have to do that in order to get them, and that's
Yeah.
okay. So that's a skill in and of itself, being able to be okay. And then also what I would say, not only is it a skill, but you can actually enjoy that. You can enjoy jumping in. For whatever reason, I had a predisposition to like a bit more pleasure-seeking stuff, you could say, as Cameron would attest to, because we've known each other for a long time. And Cameron as well is a bit like that as well, but just a bit more. He just seems a bit more put together, but he's not, right?
That's
Um,
right. I'm just more secretive about it.
yeah, exactly. He's more professional about it. But sometimes, you have to do that. And I think a big challenge for a lot of people, for some clients that I've had who are more logical who have been more successful, but in a bit more of a conventional way. Think like a software engineer, right? Or a very logical, heady doctor. For those people, it's a bit harder to accept, to embrace change, partly because their job has told them that that's not okay. You know,
Yeah.
you can't be like feeling when you're coding software for multi-million dollar company. You can't be like, oh yeah, that feels all right. You have to be very sure that that is going to be something that works. Otherwise, you're going to get that invoice a few months later, and then
Yeah.
you're going to get fired at the same time. You get that with those jobs that demand specificity, it can sometimes be a little bit tough. But when that does change, that's why it's important to have, somebody like Cameron who's able to identify what to go into. Not just look at the contents of something, but look at where somebody is faltering. And you're like, let's address that first. Being okay with that.
Mm. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a beautiful perspective.
Thank you.
And I like what you said about sometimes it is going into that cold lake or
Yeah,
pond in Victoria Park
yeah,
and just being okay with jumping in.
yeah. You have to. Those dogs aren't going to take care of themselves.
Yeah. And what I'm wondering, and I think would give a greater perspective on some of the insights that you're sharing, would
Hmm.
be I wonder if you could share a little bit of your story, because there's many different ways that can be told, there's many different branches,
Hmm.
but I wonder what would arise for you today as your way of getting here.
Yeah. Well, I guess it would start with martial arts. Originally with Muay Thai. Just done a couple of burner fights. Wasn't anything, you know. I would say the first one I won, the second one was a bit more of a tough contest because I gassed out in the first round.
Ooh, tough day at
Which
the
was
office.
yeah, that was a tough day at the office. So I just kept on trying to clinch with this dude and throwing knees and stuff like that because I was basically fat and out of shape. Because I come back from we had like a 5-day trip to Spain in our school did, which for some reason, which I can't put into words, they decided to do a bus trip with us. So it took like a day to get there and a day to go back. So we only had like 3 days in Spain instead of just taking, the aeroplane. But whatever. And I just come back from that trip and the fight was like a week after. So I gassed out because I just didn't have enough training time. But I got started in that, and I moved to like some Kung Fu Shaolin, partly because I just wanted to see if that stuff was actually effective. You know, I would say I'm 50-50 on that. It wasn't, the best thing. I would say Muay Thai is still much better. But then started to really get into jiu-jitsu because I wanted to do MMA, but I
Mm,
didn't know any grappling. So I was like, let me just start with jiu-jitsu. I can add the MMA stuff in later. Started with one of my friends, Peter, who I'm still friends with now. Um, and he's also still doing jiu-jitsu right now, and I'm helping him with some mindset stuff for that, amongst other things. And at the start, I didn't like it because I got beat up by like grown men. I was like 17 years old, and I was just getting absolutely ran through by these old guys on steroids. And
yeah,
yeah, and I got pretty. But then there was something addictive about that process. I just liked getting the aggression out, getting my mind focused on things. I liked the aspect of fighting. Like I was very much into the samurai, all that kind of stuff. So I just progressed and
yeah,
progressed and progressed until I was doing those 6 day hour days, five, 6 days a week, and then my rest days would be about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, right? So that was my martial arts journey. Now at the same
mm,
time, I was doing martial arts. I was also getting really into some spiritual stuff and some mindset stuff, like the early kind of phase of hypnotherapy, because I wanted to be better at competing at the same time, right?
yeah,
And that's how we stumbled into our mentor, Pierre, who at this time was on the internet and you could find him.
yeah,
Um, but now, he's not. So he was helping with that. He was also helping with some dating stuff, some masculine polarity stuff. which he has since transitioned from. And again, he was a thought leader in all of those spaces because he was able to bring all of it together, do really wide leading. The reason why he was able to dominate that space for people that were ready is exactly the same thing that we were talking about. He was able to go into so many different paradigms, hold
Mm.
all of them as one, and integrate them. And talk about someone who didn't mind being a student, it was this man. So
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
great, it was a great teacher for that, you know? So
Yeah.
I was learning all of that kind of stuff, going deeper into that, working for him a bit, working for him, and then we kind of split up for a time period just because the business changed. And this whole time it was just getting deeper and deeper into the practices. So we started off with Advaita Vedanta, which is a Hindu-based insight practice, which is called self-inquiry. Then we transitioned from the Hindu. We also done a little bit of Bhakti, but I think Cameron did a bit more of Bhakti yoga than I did, which is the path of devotion, which I'm sure Cameron can tell you about. But not enough for me to really count it. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel called I did 2,300 hours of meditation plus here's what I learned. And that was a number which I actually did calculate, and it's on the lower side of what I think I did because I didn't want to overstate. And I didn't include the Bhakti in those numbers. But we started off with that, and then we transitioned to some more traditional Theravadan Buddhism, which is Vipassana, but before that, I did Mahasi style noting. I'm not sure if you ever did that, Cameron, but it's like one of the most, it's a super hardcore practice and not necessarily in a good way. It was just like very, very much focused on a certain type of mindfulness, which is actually something which I encourage my students to avoid because it's harmful to your practice. And then there was some Dzogchen, which is open sky meditation. There was
Mm.
Anapana breathing, which is the classic nose breathing, which most people are doing incorrectly. You're supposed to have a much a finer. I'm not just picking my nose. You're supposed to have a much finer,
Yeah.
sphere
Yeah.
of focus on your nose here. Me and Cameron did the same retreat, actually. Great
Mm.
retreat. I still have really fond memories of it, of
Such a
10
treat.
days. Oh, the food was amazing. Yeah, that British cuisine, which
Oh
it wasn't actually. They had this
no.
chickpea fried rice in the mornings. Oh my God, so good.
Amazing.
Um, Amazing place because of the food. So that was a 10-day silent retreat. I'm kind of paraphrasing all of this stuff because I want to say I went super deep into the spiritual stuff, and then all of a sudden I got a text from Pierre being like, "Hey, I was back on this business doing a bit of outreach alongside Cameron, and he was like, "Hey, you want to? Cameron's learning this HH course, but do you want to do a different hypnotherapy course?" Just as like a backup coach. Like I was, because he was like, this guy wants to do jiu-jitsu full time. He's a fighter, all this kind of stuff. Obviously, I had a lot of pride around that. It's a cool thing to say. Like, I'm a fighter, I'm an athlete. And I was like, sure, I'll do that. So I start learning this hypnotherapy methods. It's pretty cool. And that's when, right there is when I start looking more at the unconscious mind. How can I actually solve certain problems in my unconscious so they affect my conscious, like competing. So, for example, the reason why I felt so good at the World Championships was because me and Pierre had done unconscious work. Again, he did that with me for free. He'd done it unconscious work with me in order so I could go to the World Championships and perform at a level which was the same as how I was practicing in on the mats in England. Uh, did you want to say something? Sorry.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
with you. Yeah, keep going. I feel like I'm in the
So
story.
that's right. My amazing storytelling skills. So I'm learning this. I just come back from the World Championships and I'm tired. Like that World Championships, I've used all of my remaining motivation and kind of pushing all of the worries around jiu-jitsu I had to the side to just focus on that. That's what competitions are great for, especially a big one. You can just really focus on that. And I really enjoyed the process of the grind for that competition. But I come back and the illusion had been shattered. The illusion that jiu-jitsu was going to make me happy was gone, or that competing was going to make me happy was gone. See, for my friend Peter, who I briefly mentioned, the way that he was constructing his reality of jiu-jitsu was different to me. For me, looking back on it, while Peter was much more of an artist, I was actually much more of a competitor.
Mm.
Like it was the competition, it was the intensity of the competition, it was the intensity of the actual action of testing myself. Not necessarily even against someone, but just testing myself against myself. Because I think in some ways you can look at it as it is just a solo sport, even though you're fighting somebody. You're also testing your relationship with yourself. As soon as the allure of the biggest competition in the world had gone, I was kind of, it really made me come and call into question what it is I actually wanted. So I decided to book a holiday to this place called Gdansk, Poland, not Poland, to this place called Gdansk in Poland, where our friend Cameron was staying with Pierre and our other mentor is going to be introduced to this story called a little lady called Sister Kante Kema, who
Yes.
was one of the most senior Buddhist monastics in the entire world, had met with the King of Thailand, the Prime Minister of Japan. We heard a lot of stories about Japan from her.
She loved Japan.
Yeah, she had a few. She loved Japan, and she was there with Pierre, with Cameron, and soon to be with me, teaching us the Dharma, how to apply it in the most effective way, how to also practice it in the most effective way. And then she was supposed to go back to India after she held this
Yeah.
retreat for a few months or whatever. So I ended up going to Poland. First day I get there, I was like, this is what I want. I don't know where it came from, but I was so certain. And I asked
Mm.
Pierre, can you imagine if I never asked him this question, if I was too scared to ask this question? And
Yeah.
my life would have
It
been
would have.
completely different. Our
Yeah.
life would have been completely
It
different.
would have been. I
Yeah,
have no idea what would have happened if you went
yeah,
back, done jujitsu.
that's right. This is why you say yes to adventure, guys. This is why you say yes to your intuition. You figure things out later. Because I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. I know this is a big ask, but is it possible for me to do the same thing as Cameron? Now, looking back at it, was this a situation which Pierre had probably predicted? Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, because he wanted me there for some reason, and he was like, "Yeah, we can do something similar." So first day, I packed for 10 days. I call my mom and I say, "Hey, mom, I'm not coming back. I'm going to stay here." And to her credit, she was like, "Yeah." I also broke up with my girlfriend that
Yeah,
same day as well.
big day for
So
you.
yeah, that was a big day. There's a big day at the office
Yeah.
from Aaron, my girlfriend of a year. So, there's all sunshine and rainbows because, I just
Mm.
wasn't going to do long distance and this is what I wanted to do. I just felt a real big passion and calling that for whatever this work was, working in this business, having a bit more freedom, but also helping people in this kind of a profound way because we were running them through the meditation, running them through the unconscious healing, again, teaching them some polarity stuff, teaching them some kind of self-actualization systems
Yeah.
as the name that I later took on, as a real comprehensive guide to it was primarily around relationships and then everything else was filled in on the back end later. We would get them with relationships and then we would teach them all the real useful stuff
Yeah.
as the course went on. But relationships is what what people want to learn
Yeah.
about. So that's how we got them.
And then we bring in
And
the Dharma after.
that's right. Or we bring it
Yeah.
in straight away. And they'd be like, what is this? We're like, we got you for 9 months now, you know.
Yeah.
So doing all of that, and then it just one thing leads to another, doing more hypnotherapy courses, more shadow work courses, learning obviously from Sister Kaima, who unfortunately got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So we ended up having to take care of her for the next year and a half until she passed away. And that's the whole journey of how I got into this. And then we split up again, so we're all doing individual things. And here I am talking to you. And that's the kind of obviously I glossed through the second half of that because I don't think it's as important as the first half.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just curious, just on that end part, because I know for me, that experience, and I think it was the same for you with Sister, where she was really living the practice towards the end of
Yeah,
her life,
yeah,
where she was literally in a hospice in,
yeah,
country that she doesn't know,
yeah,
with some kind of loving Eastern Europeans who showed it in a bit of a harsh way
yeah.
sometimes. And
Yeah. I
and
quite like the guy who ran the hostel.
yeah, he was a sweetheart, really, really nice.
Oh, yeah, the hospice, not the hostel.
Yeah,
Wasn't a party. Yeah, we just, as she was dying, we just stuck her in a hostel, you know.
yeah. I mean, she'd love that.
I
She
mean,
would
she
like
would have loved
run the
that though.
hostel.
Yeah,
Yeah, by the
she
end of
would have
it.
ran the hostel. So she was a bit of a extroverted character, you could say. So I think if we stuck her in a party hostel at the end of things, she
Yeah,
would have just converted everyone to the Dharma for sure.
yeah. Everyone would be listening to her. But I'm
Yeah,
curious what that experience was like for you to literally live with, you know, a real practitioner and teacher
yeah,
as she uses it in the most
yeah. In the hardest
real way
hardest reader
possible.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah,
So for those of you that maybe might not be following, basically what this was is we were watching her handle the process of dying. And it was there like every day. So when she was really kind of taking a turn for the worse, I think it was the last 2 months we went there every day, or maybe it was the last month we went there every day. But every 2 months we would go there like every other day, or we started ramping it up because it's kind of like when somebody is dying, it kind of all happens at once. Like they're fine, 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 and then boom, something snaps and they just go into deterioration mode, essentially. And before this, we were taking her out once a week, having a big family sit down, basically, at a
yeah,
nice restaurant, and then seeing her one time during the week, and she would just get on with her stuff. And obviously, we still have to work, and while she was in the hospice. But then she takes this downward spiral. But this whole time, she's been told that she has terminal stage 4 cancer. And apparently, the story is verified by Pierre and this other person, Lubomir and Patrick and all these people. She gets told like the doctor's all in a bit of a serious mood. He's like, "Hey, I need to speak to you." She's like, "Sure." There's no easy way to say it, so I'm just going to say it. But you're terminal. And in sister fashion, she starts laughing, but like a genuine laugh, not like a stressed out laugh. And the doctor's probably thinking, okay, poor lady, she's probably gone senile. I need to make sure that she really understands what I just said. She says, no, no, I don't know why you're laughing. You're terminal. Like this is a sickness which is going to kill you. Like you are terminal. She keeps on laughing, and he's like, no, do you understand? And he was like, he's like trying to say like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm not sure you understand what I'm saying. And she goes, well, the reason why I'm laughing is because you told me something I already know. I'm terminal, and you're terminal. She points to the nurse, and he or she is terminal. I think it was a she. She's terminal. We're all terminal. That's why I'm laughing. You just told me something which is the most obvious thing in the world, right? Now, this might sound like bravado, but this is genuinely what Sister believed because we were there the whole process. I don't think I ever saw a flicker of doubt, a flicker of fear at all when it comes to
wow,
her dying. Like if I really look back on it, because I was looking for it too. I was like, I want to see how she handles this. But she had such a mastery of the practice, of the teaching that all things are impermanent, that there is no self, and that suffering is self-created. She was in a lot of pain, you could tell that. But I would say her suffering was zero or almost zero in the thing which is really the thing that we're all scared of, which is the fear of death, the fear of no longer being here, the fear of no longer being alive. So it definitely got me to think about death almost all the time. I almost think about death like daily, but not in a ruminating, scared way. Although there is sometimes fear that definitely comes up with it, but more in like a contemplative, like, wow, this thing that I feel like a lot of people just push to the side is actually going to happen. It's the most real thing in the world. So if that's constantly at the front of your decision making, then I would say it actually makes you much easier for you to take risks, for you to say yes to things, for you not to conserve as much and hold back. Obviously, if you have the same kind of mind as me, some of you might want to use that differently. But I think that death is a thing that we avoid quite a lot in this world because we're just so isolated from it. We don't see the animals that we eat. We don't see them die. We don't see our loved ones die, really. We don't see people, strangers die at all. So it's a very convenient thing to not look at. And actually, I would say the power in looking at that is, first of all, you see someone handle that situation in an extremely mature way, in a way which is honestly very inspiring that somebody can do the process of dying in that kind of way. Because we were reading to her, like part of the thing is, of the Buddhist lineage is you have to read, I think, 142 and 146 in the Majjhima Nikaya suttas. You have to read
Yeah.
them. So the first one takes about 20 minutes to read, second one takes an hour to read. If you do it properly, and it's supposed to get the person's mind right in order to so that when they pass on, they can pass on in the most easy way possible with the most attainments possible. So it makes their next rebirth easier or in a better place. Um,
Mm.
that's the theology behind it, at least. And yeah, it was just like a very kind of interesting thing to get introduced to at 23, 24 years old, when you're really at the
Yeah.
start of life, to see somebody at the end of theirs, somebody who
Mm.
was, a big influence. And when you're confronted with the fear, which I think actually underlines a lot of the shadows that we have, if you really
Yeah.
look back at it, fear of death. People talk about the ego death all the time. It's a bit overused, in my opinion, by the spiritual woo-woo types who don't really understand what that means. But some kind of metaphorical, spiritual, symbolic death of this identity. Like social, like if people have social anxiety, it's the death of the identity of being maybe a socially adjusted person. Maybe I'm going to, by saying hi to this person at the coffee shop even, or even just having a little bit of banter with the barista, people who really struggle with social anxiety and fear of judgment. Because there's that death of the persona which they have clung to and built up, which is safe, of I am the socially cool one or the socially adjusted one or this person or that person. It's in some ways you can think of it as a death in some kind of way. So I think if you have really faced that or you're really comfortable with that, then these shadows can have a lot less power than they do.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's a beautiful perspective. I've never even seen social anxiety in that way, but that's really true.
Mhm.
It's that ending of what was safe and what was comfortable and what was known to come
Yeah,
into what's beyond,
yeah,
whatever that may be.
yeah, yeah. It's you can look at it that way. I mean, you can look at it in a thousands of different ways, but I would say that that is a big part of how that journey affected me, being able to see impermanence in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Um, what about you?
Yeah. For me, to be honest, it was just weirdly nourishing. Like it's so
Yeah,
odd to describe it like that.
yeah,
But, we would go every day and you mentioned Majjhima Nikaya, which is, for really bad layman's terms, it's like the Bible for Buddhism, right? Kind of,
or one of the Bibles. Yeah,
yeah, one of them
yeah,
for anyone who's not really immersed in that world. And we're just reading pretty much the same two texts, right? The
yeah,
same two stories every other day.
yeah.
And when we go into this period, because there's a real period towards the end where we're literally going every day for, I think,
Hmm.
for about 2 months or maybe 3 months. And, in my life at that time, I was still immersed in meeting people, being social, had a new
Yeah,
relationship at that time, you
yeah. You
know,
did.
business, these things that were really important to me and still are. But, at that time, I remember
That became the
thinking,
forefront, right?
yeah, it
Everything else
was,
just dropped away.
but not at first, right? Because at first
Yeah,
it was like that resistance, like,
yeah.
yeah, like you're,
We have to
and
read this
it's,
hour-long thing. Yeah.
yeah,
It sounds
and
horrible, but you do have these thoughts that come up,
yeah,
Oh, it's so
just
inconvenient. You,
literally, literally.
yeah,
And being you know, open about just being a 20-year-old. We were early 20s, both of us,
Yeah.
in that
I think you were
experience.
22,
Yeah,
right? At this
22, something
time.
like that.
Yeah.
And, part of you doesn't want to be there. Part of you is like, I'm a bit bored. But
Mm.
then what happened was
We have the
just,
best video of this, by the way. There's a video that our friend took of us,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is all us sitting next to sister. I would say that we would put it in this podcast, but I'm not sure we could actually share that because it's not just us in the video. But it's
yeah.
basically Pierre reading from the Majjhima Nikaya and me and Cameron just zoned out in the background, like because this was like, the 50th day in the row of us reading the same thing
Yeah.
over and over. And we could almost like repeat a lot of it just from like a little
Mm,
like a pointer. If someone just said a line at this point, at least for me, I'm sure it's the same for you, they could say one line in one of the texts, and I could say the next few lines just off by
yeah,
heart because we
yeah.
just learned about it so much.
And what was strange is there was a click. I remember
Yeah.
like suddenly it stopped
It's like
going
halfway
from,
through.
yeah, being in
Yeah.
resistance to suddenly you're kind of experiencing the text
Yeah.
and not just what it's saying, but what it's speaking about, the
Yeah.
the harmony and the peace that it's really trying to take you to.
Yeah.
And suddenly that just kind of washed over me. And I
Yeah.
think it was the same for you. I think it was the same for
Yeah.
Pierre, Patrick. I don't know
Yeah.
about Toby.
Yeah.
I think he struggled
I
till
think
the end.
Toby I think Toby was in struggle city mode for the whole time.
Yeah.
Um, Toby's one of our
And
friends,
yeah, he's good
for those of you who
friends.
don't know. Yeah, good friend.
But anyway, as it just washed over me, the last few weeks of that experience was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it got me into a real spiritual phase that
Yeah.
time. It really like started to click for me, the meditation, everything we'd been learning from Sister for 2 years. It's almost
Yeah.
like it came into a really deep part of me where I was
Yeah.
watching her live it and we were going through the process with her.
Yeah.
And then even to the point where we actually saw the body. And there's a
Yeah.
practice in Buddhism where see, you like go to graveyards and you look at dead bodies because it's to show
Oh yeah.
impermanence.
Yeah.
And for me, like really seeing one, never seen one before. It was pretty
Yeah. We didn't even see
scary.
it fully. It was like because
Yeah,
they put a cut like a
yeah,
thin blanket over it. And
mm,
the first thing you notice when you see somebody who's dead is how much the body has shrunk because all
yeah,
of their air and also at this point some of the water has like gone. So it's really puts into your mind, we are not the body.
yeah.
Now, not in a disassociative way. Okay, guys, we don't want to start disassociating. That's very, very important, which our mentor actually just recently. But well, I mean, we've been told about this for a while. A lot of people seem to have, unfortunately, in the community is certain disassociative parts of their personality, which is not what we're trying to do here. But you really, in a very clear and clean way, you start to see how this body is not all we are. Because how is it just a few hours after we die, suddenly it just this is no longer sister. This is no
Yeah,
longer sister came out at all. But I remember
no,
getting vertigo walking into that room because we
it
got the
was,
call that she passed in the night peacefully from what we heard. And I mean, we don't really know what to expect. We're kind of like joking on the way because you kind of like you don't really know like how to act in that situation,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, it's weird.
So also, she would be perfectly fine with us joking around on the day
Yeah,
of her
yeah,
death. She would probably want to get in with the banter as well if she could.
yeah,
Um, but we show up. I
100%.
think I'm one of the first people in the room. I think I am the
Mm.
first person in the room. I think maybe Toby was the first. I can't remember who it
No,
is.
he didn't go in. He didn't go in. It
Oh,
was
that's
just
right. Yeah,
you, then Pierre, then me.
that's right. Where was
Yeah,
Patrick?
I don't know. I don't think he went in. I actually don't know.
Yeah, I think Patrick was there too. Anyway, I go in and I just see the body, and it's like my head just starts spinning, and I feel like my head is going really up and like unstable. Like it was so strange. And I was like, whoa, this is intense. And and I go to take blanket off, and you and Pierre were like, "Don't take that off. We don't need to see it." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, good call."
You you went straight into it,
Yeah,
like
I
you
thought
do
that's
with
what you were
everything.
supposed to
That's
do. I
right.
thought you were supposed to let's just see what we're working with. But
Come on, lads, let's go. Here we
yeah,
go.
like hey, I'm from partly an Irish family. We're supposed to have that coffin. That coffin's supposed to be open. But yeah, that was intense, wasn't
Super intense. And yeah, really like it was almost like those last
it?
few months showed the things the sister had been telling us for 2 years.
Yeah.
And there was like a beautiful parallel with that, which is
Hmm.
really rich.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a formative experience for sure. And then after that, that's when the company basically dissolved. For
Yeah,
those of you that are following our loose timeline of how we got to speaking to you guys right
yeah,
now, that's when our company dissolved. She was what was holding everything together, basically.
yeah, literally. Literally, she
Hmm.
was the glue.
Yeah.
And so, what I'm curious about now, we've kind of run through how you got here, but there is this really interesting place where you jump into running your own business, which, if
Mhm.
I'm correct, was the first time for you.
Yeah, first time.
And because a lot of people who are watching this are probably business owners or salespeople who are
Yeah.
immersing themselves in this world, I'm
Oh
curious
yeah,
if you
that's
could
right.
speak to your delving into that with the wisdom that you had, the real deep experience you had with Sister, with Pierre, with a few other teachers, and
Hmm.
what that was like taking into building a business.
Yeah, well, the first it was tough, as it tends to
Yeah,
be. I
yeah,
don't think that would come as a surprise to anybody. I was very good at kind of being like the soldier who would just do stuff for
mm,
just like hours at a time. But when it came to taking your own initiative, this is why I never really viewed myself at all as like a natural entrepreneur, because I don't think I am, to be honest with you. I think I would be just as happy if I had a flexible job, paid the salary every month, and I was with people that I enjoyed working with on a project that I enjoyed doing. I'm more than happy to be the second man, you know,
yeah,
to be like kind of, well, I guess what it would be like not the captain, but like the captain's like right hand man who has a lot of
yeah.
autonomy, a lot of flexibility. I'm more than happy to fill in that role. So I think maybe I'm a little bit different. I'm different. I don't want to come
I'm
not like that.
special. I'm not
Yeah, I'm
like you guys.
special. Have you picked me out, all that kind of stuff. I don't mean it like that. Or maybe I do. Who knows? It's an unconscious blind spot again. We started with Cameron's blind spot, now we have a blind spot for
That's
me.
right. That's right.
But I was more than happy for doing that. Um, and I cannot explain to you how much the Social Stage Adventure, which is the company we were working with for a year and a half, completely drained me of all of my savings. So we had nothing, basically. Right.
Oh,
So, oh well, that's
starting
the
from
banter of
zero.
business. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was draining my savings while having a kebab plate every day for lunch. So it wasn't like we were
Yeah.
living lavish, although we did have some lavish times actually. Now I think about it, which
Mm,
was an interesting experience having those feast and famine kind of moments in the business of Social Sage. But essentially, it's over. I think I stay like a month or a month and a half at home in England, just chilling out, honestly. I think it was actually a time period which I really liked. I was doing some Ido Portal movement stuff, um, going to the gym, eating some glorious English food, as
yeah.
Cameron can attest to, enjoying the weather. I think when I was there, it was literally raining every single day. It was one of the
Oh,
worst periods of weather back when I was in England. But I go to Toby and Patrick and I say, let's make this Thailand trip happen. Now, for those of you who think you don't have any savings, you're going to Thailand, let me rephrase that. That trip to Thailand, I think, was actually paid by the company still, because it was a long handoff process. Because obviously, Pierre doesn't want to just let us go cold turkey. This is one of the
yeah.
benefits of having your mentor also be your boss. While there's a lot of expectations placed on you, much more than actually being in a conventional business, I would argue, much, much more. Our expectations were extremely, extremely high, which is why. we're able to run our businesses the way that we do, in the products the way that we do.
Yeah.
Um, Not saying that out of arrogance, but just out of the expectations during the
Experience.
time and our training was extremely, extremely rigorous because we were working with Pierre's clients who's been in this industry for over a decade and a half. He needs to make sure that his clients who are paying upwards of 10K or 9K at some times are getting their money's worth, you know,
Yeah.
because these are people that he works with for years and years at a time. This isn't like a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
So if the boys, Amron and Cameron, are going in and just kind of giving the bare minimum, that's really, really not going to fly because these are lifetime partnerships, essentially. So we had
Especially,
all,
so I don't want to cut you
go
off.
on.
I just want
No, no,
to
go for it,
add
go for it.
to it. With some of them, when what you were 24, me 22, who were
Yeah,
double our age, sometimes triple, like maybe not
yeah,
right there, 50
almost triple
seasoned
though. Yeah,
entrepreneurs, right? Who had really
yeah,
been there, done it, been for every coaching program you could imagine, really
yeah.
high level guys.
And not seeing the
And
results as well. So a lot was
yeah,
riding on this one. Yeah,
yeah, like you better work, right? You better
yeah,
do a good
yeah.
job.
Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a refund, even though you guys don't have the money. And unlike, I think actually a lot of businesses in the space, that refund would have been instantly delivered pretty much. Not
Yeah,
without like obviously a bit of like, are you actually doing the stuff? But it was kind of a high stakes game. So I
yeah.
had all of that kind of training, um, basically a 24/7 immersion for year and a half, 2 years, much more longer term online, much more, a few more years. Same with Cameron. And we go to Thailand and I had a guaranteed income of €300 in Thailand. That's how much I had managed to close. But it's a good move because, it's low cost of living. So when I get there and I just start having to figure it out, at this time I'm going on Facebook. I don't use Facebook anymore because it's a bit of a wasteland, you could argue. And you just kind of have to be okay with a lot of uncertainty, be okay with being in a completely different culture that you've never been to ever before. Again, guys, it's not a blueprint of how to do this. It's just how I worked. I liked
Yeah,
doing this stuff because
head
it kind
first
of
in.
puts more of it. Exactly, that's how I like to learn, which is one of the big lessons that you learn from having this kind of work with a one-on-one mentor and also being in the business is you really get to truly understand how you work. And it's not in like a fancy woo-woo kind of way. The same way that if you understand how to use your editing software for making content, how do you think your content will be affected if you know how to use it versus you're just learning it for the first time? One is going to be much more professional, much more productive, much more streamlined than the other. It's the same for yourself. Now, obviously, we're not as rudimentary as an editing software. That's not what the analogy is there for. The analogy is there for if you truly know yourself, your blocks, how to overcome those blocks, then there is no task that you cannot do. If there's no task that you cannot do, then under a long time horizon, there is nothing which you cannot achieve that you want to. So just start doing outreach, content, all that kind of good stuff. I can't stress to you enough how much I didn't know how to do content, right? So I wasn't working with a lot. But if you just do something for a long enough time and work hard enough without burning yourself out, how do you do that? Well, you don't burn yourself out by forcing yourself to do something. It's just very low friction. I just do this and then I do that. There's no suffering when I do it. That's all the mindset work and all the books. Now I feel worthy of it and all that kind of stuff. It just becomes so much easier. I'm not sure if that was the answer to your question. Can we take a
Yeah,
quick pause? I just need to use the bathroom.
yeah, yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. And the
You're
curiosity that
welcome.
arises for me is what kind of people do you find feel drawn to the work that you do and specifically with you? So I find that
Mm,
there's a real richness in people that I know who work with you. And it's hard to say what that is, but there is something there.
yeah. Well, I mean, even the clients, which I've signed on a couple of new clients last month, most recently. And it's usually, there's usually a thing which starts it off, but it's always with the expectation that they want to work on a bunch of different problems in their life over a long period of time. So it's not like they want to get rid of anxiety, or maybe that's how they get into it. But even when they're in the depths of anxiety, they're like, no, but I want to learn about this as well. All this stuff you're talking about, I want to learn about how to use the mind properly, meditation. How do I decrease suffering in general? How do I not get triggered by my triggers in general? Right? So there's a general aspect to it. It's almost like a a specialized generalist, kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah,
So, I mean, even in jobs, it doesn't even make sense. I'm working with a software engineer, I'm working with a guy who's working in corporate, I'm working with someone who does shadow work, facilitates shadow work similar to me. I'm his mentor. I'm working with someone who's a professional in jiu-jitsu. I'm working with all of these different, so there's not even like an archetype of person when it comes to job. What it
mm,
is someone who has a problem, a specific problem. Like, how do I become more vulnerable, not just for the sake of being vulnerable? This is one of my clients that I signed on recently, but because I can see that it is impacting negatively how I choose life partners, both in friendships and romantic relationships. What was
mm,
the trigger that made him reach out to me? Because his friend recommended him as he was breaking up with his girlfriend, who has somehow turned very toxic. Now, obviously, there's two sides to every story, two sides to every coin. So it's not like a blaming thing here, but that's what he's experiencing. Okay.
right,
But he's extremely interested in self-actualization systems, right? He was part of my live stream for the product which I was going to sell for 3 to 500 euro, the most practical guide to shadow work on the internet. He was one of the guys on there, intensely curious about the way that I do shadow work and how he can do that on himself. So it's the archetype is somebody who's, let's say, 21 to 35. That's my main age range, who generally wants to look at self-actualization in an integrated way. So that there's not one area which is not being looked at. How do I
okay,
use my mind properly? How do I show up in the world properly? How do I level up my perspective so I have less fear? How do I no longer get affected by insecurity?
yeah,
So it's in some ways, like I said, it's very general, but it makes sense because when I was starting this journey from the very start, that's what I wanted. Yes, I
mm,
wanted to get better, not be so nervous when I was talking to a woman that I was attracted to, and also not be so nervous when I was competing in a competition. These are like the triggers that really let me know, hey, I want to work on this stuff.
yeah,
But it was with the understanding that this is a life partner, a life practice,
mm,
right?
yeah. And you said something so interesting. You said the way that you do shadow work. And,
Yeah,
we've had similar trainings, similar but different,
very similar.
right? We had
Yeah,
amazing mentors. We've been through, you know, several different modalities of hypnotherapy.
yeah,
We had, one of the greatest meditation teachers alive
yeah,
with us for 2 years, and then,
yeah,
even learning from a psychotherapist the last few
yeah.
years. But I'm curious, what defines Aaron Zarita shadow work?
Well, that is a very interesting question, which I've never asked myself. I think what it is it's so Cameron started with a modality called advanced conversational hypnotherapy, which I actually think, I mean, we've just been giving recommendations to people who have no affiliation to us this whole podcast. But but really, ACH, if you're just getting into shadow work, internal healing, or even if you're a coach, I mean, if you're a coach and you integrate this will put you ahead of 99% of all coaches in the industry for the rest of
For
time.
sure. Yeah,
This is crazy. It's like 1,000 euro. I think it's 1,000 euro or something like that.
it's not super
Um,
expensive.
Not super
Yeah.
expensive. You can put that on the payment plan. So Scott
Yeah.
Jansen, you're welcome.
Pays for itself.
Someone, yeah, pays for itself, doesn't it? You know, one of the best modalities. I would say I still use that as like 75% of everything I
Mm,
do. However,
mm,
that 25% of all the other stuff I've integrated is what I think sets it apart. Because whilst we can say 75% in terms of content, I would say the structure of what it's held in is something which is much more similar to Kim Barter's method of evolution of shadow resolution, where you have to have a developmental view of shadow work. If somebody doesn't have the developmental view of shadow work, they just get stuck in loops that they can't really break out because they don't have access to breaking out of it. So an example for this would be like if someone's just trying to heal the anxiety, they might be able to heal that kind of anxiety, but because they're not able to pierce through and look at the root cause of
mm,
something, that anxiety will just come up in different ways later down the line. And you need to have a developmental view of how shadow works in order to be able to first of all see that and then know how to differentiate the shadows and heal it.
so
Um,
just quickly,
yeah,
I'm curious for people, there'll be people who are newer.
yeah,
How
yeah.
would you define and share what developmental view of shadow work means?
So developmental view of shadow, inspired by Kim. I think I got the wording from Pierre,
Mm.
this mysterious man who you can't find on the internet.
Yeah, literally, just in a
Yeah,
cave somewhere.
yeah, just meditating. And it's essentially we have developmental levels. Okay. So if you're interested in Cameron's stuff, he's probably talked about this a little bit, or if he hasn't talked about it explicitly, it's been implicit in everything that he talks about,
Mm,
because he's also informed in this way. But the good thing about being informed in this way is you don't have to shove it down people's throats. You can just trust that the person understands it. Obviously, in order to make sure you actually trust the person, we're not just telling you to trust everyone, right? Make sure you actually
yeah.
trust the person. But essentially, what it is if we have different perspectives within ourselves, like people talk about it most classically in the fact that we have an inner child, or we have an inner adolescent, or we have a really strict adult, right? What they're alluding to, but without the specificity, is that we have different parts of ourselves, and not even different parts, but different beliefs and insecurities that are at different levels of our development. And we have to know how to talk to these different levels, because if we don't, it's like trying to find the light switch when the room is dark,
Mm, yeah,
like trying to find the new world, like the Americas, without a map.
yeah,
You can do it, but you can also not do it. And if you don't do it, you have this pretty serious consequences. Those serious
yeah.
consequences are you can reinforce it, you can strengthen it, you can make it become more walled off from you because you're not talking to it in a language which it understands. The
Mm,
same way that you can't hold a child to the standard of a professional adult. And if you are, there might be some progress on the surface, but deep down, that's just developing more insecurities for that child because
yeah.
they're just not able to handle it. That's also the same for yourself. So you have to know this, and also you have to know the system of how a shadow or an insecurity has developed within yourself, how it was implanted. These are not coming out of nowhere. When you're born, you do not have an insecurity that you're not good enough. Like the moment you come into the world, did you have an insecurity that you weren't good enough? No. How do I know that? Because you don't even have the mindfulness to conceptualize that yet,
Yeah.
right? So we have to know the system of how something is created, implanted, and sustained within us. The sustained is the part which most people don't talk about. But something is not just there because we fought it one time and now it's there. There's a process of sustainment. There's an ecosystem within us, the same way that a tree is sustained by the environment around it. Our beliefs and our insecurities are sustained by the environment within us. So I would
Mm,
say, to be a roundabout answer to your question, Aaron's style of shadow work is an ecosystem that's not lost in the nuance. You don't get lost in the jungle. It's highly practical and efficient. Now, shadow work is inherently inefficient because we don't know where people are. So it's not a three-step solution. to overcome an insecurity. It can happen in one step, it can happen in two, it can happen in three, it can happen in 10. You never know.
Mm.
But we have to work with what is given to us.
It's a beautiful perspective. I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
And I love the view of shadow work in that way. And
Yeah.
even the way that you're labeling your company self-actualization systems, I
Yeah.
think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And so what I'm curious about, because not only do you teach this and help others through it, you're
Mhm.
rigorously doing this on yourself
Yeah.
every single day,
Hmm.
probably sometimes every single hour of the day. And what I'm curious about is what's been kind of alive for you in your own development, or even just what you've been witnessing with clients just recently? Is there anything that's like arises when I ask you that?
Yeah. I would say the biggest breakthrough that clients have universally, irrelevant, and for me as well, obviously, I'm included, that's universally a big breakthrough. And let me know if it's the same for you. In some kind of a way, they stop being attached so much to themselves, right? In
Yeah,
Buddhism, we would say this is them permanently being able to see the concept of anicca. Anicca is the Pali word for impermanence. Now, whilst Buddhism teaches this and you can experience this in meditation, because the practice itself is different, it can become very disassociative, as you can, as I mean, we can see from meditation teachers or people who get involved in meditation, which is hurts your progress because whilst everything is impermanent, including this sense of self, we are still living through this sense of self, right? There
yeah,
is still a Cameron here and an Aaron on the relative level. And whilst it's completely impermanent and empty, it came from a place of consciousness, so it's actually full and alive of consciousness.
yeah,
That's the duality right here. This is non-duality. So some real basic stuff for people that are just getting interested in this thing, right, Cameron?
yeah. That's right. Just basic stuff.
just
You
just
know,
you know, some basic 9 to 5
just
details.
yeah, exactly. That's right. Just free tips. There you
Yeah.
go.
3 quick tips
Easy.
to get over your anxiety.
That's
Easy.
right.
Job done,
Easy,
mate.
easy application. Just go and have a non-dual experience. No, no, no worries. All good.
Yeah. Don't
But
worry about it.
I just wanted to add to that because what you were saying was so rich. And I actually had an amazing call with Pierre recently, and he just used the perfect metaphor
Hmm.
is thinking of a rainbow. Like you can
Yeah.
see a rainbow, but the rainbow I'm seeing is different to the rainbow Aaron's seeing. And if you really
Yeah.
come up there, there's nothing to grasp. That
Yeah.
it's real, but it's not really real.
Yeah. That's an
And so,
amazing metaphor. I'm going
yeah,
deep into it right now. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. But you can experience that on a relative level, which actually is most practical to most people. So if we come back to reality right now, we stop putting our
yeah,
heads in the clouds so much and we start actually talking, putting our money where their mouth is and talking to where people are at. What this
yeah,
essentially means is a lot of the thing that's holding us back from making real transformational change is because we are attached to whatever this collection of consciousness is or this personality. Oh yeah, but that's just how I am. I'm that good looking loser. I don't have to tell you how
mm,
much that applies to me, right, Cameron? As Cameron was one of my chief shadow work consultants back in the day in Budapest. We were living in Budapest with Social Sage, right?
yeah,
There's a certain attachment we have to certain, not even parts of ourselves, but it can actually be sometimes insecurities and beliefs
yeah,
because that's what's comfortable, that's what's secure. That's also somehow, in a weird way, maybe we even get validation from ourselves. But once we pierce through that on a psychological level, so not on a non-dual level, but on the thing which is, wait, this is actually an identity which has nothing to do with me. It's something that started in this somewhat random place. Someone told me, "Oh yeah, you're just just a good-looking loser," or like an experience taught me that, and I got a little bit of validation from that, so I didn't let go of it immediately. And over time, it just built and built and built on up, and now I have this whole identity around it because I get this good-looking part. right? That's amazing. I can validate myself on that. Oh, wait, I actually am attractive, right? Which was someone who's struggling with attractiveness issues. Let's say this is you or somebody that you know. That's actually a very valuable thing, right?
Yeah.
That's the other thing which gets people to be attached to these kind of aspects of themselves because they do actually get some kind of a usefulness out of them.
Mm,
But then
yeah.
there's that thing that we started with the start of this podcast, which you have to be able to let go of that paradigm and go into this new paradigm where it actually might be harder at the beginning. So there's almost that symbolic leap of faith, right?
Yeah.
That you have to
Yeah.
go through, where you have to trust that where you are right now, or you have to essentially what it is, if I could give someone this insight who's listening, who really resonates and is like, I want to make this biggest breakthrough, which once people get this breakthrough, their progress is just exponential because it makes their personality much more fluid, which means they can change like that, which means they can let go of beliefs like that. They can integrate new ones like that. And
Yeah.
it's how I would give it to them is you recognize that yes, and you validate yourself that yes, it got you to where you are right now. Our coaching is not like super expensive, but it's not getting a cheeseburger at McDonald's. You see, this is like a serious investment,
Mm,
which is why I always tell people like, hey, if it's not right for them, or if they're kind of half-assing it, it's better for you just to save your time and money. It's just not worth it, right?
yeah.
So if you're able to afford that, then clearly it's got you some kind of way or benefit, right? It's done pretty well. Like you probably got a fairly decent job, or you can hold down the job, all this kind of stuff, right? So it's gotten you to where you are. You have to validate that. But there has to be an acceptance that I can take these lessons, but the overarching identity which is attached to these lessons has to be let go of. And there will be sadness. That's
Mm,
normal. It's normal to be sad about that because this person, this aspect of myself can no longer take me to where I want to go. And then there's the third part of that breakthrough, which is I am prepared to accept that this jump might not get me as effective as I was back here, but that is still preferable to being stuck here, if that makes
okay.
sense. I'm not sure if that makes sense, Cameron.
Yeah. It,
And that's the mechanism of doing it.
yeah. It's a beautiful perspective. And what I notice and what I'm curious about for your clients' journeys as well is what tends to happen is there's that ineffectivity that can emerge where it's a little bit more chaotic. You're emerging into the newness
Yeah,
and
got to embrace
even
the
moving
chaos.
through a bit of the grief. Yeah, you're moving into the
Yeah,
chaos. But then as you start to orient yourself from this new space, which is a new wisdom, actually a greater whole, you do transcend and include and
yeah,
even go higher than you did before.
yeah,
And so I'm just curious because also we spoke about the long term client journey, right? People are working with you for a long period of time because they know that it's not just growing, but it's exponentially growing.
yeah, yeah,
And I just want to invite you to speak about what you see in general when people go through that experience of having a breakthrough and it compounding and it moving into the next
yeah,
one, just for exponential growth.
yeah. So like everything, it starts off more difficult because most people have not really had an internal breakthrough, if we're being completely honest. Most people, myself included before this, obviously, right? It's not like I'm trying to say that I'm
Yeah,
rubbing
we're
out
just
my
so
heart here.
cool.
Yeah, I'm just, I just done all this stuff by
Yeah,
intuition, actually,
just happened when we were like three.
just happened, right?
Always.
Yeah, it's because most people live within the confines of whatever their mind has made growing up.
Mm,
Obviously, it's not like a fatalistic thing. People still grow in different ways. But if you speak to people who maybe you knew 5 years ago, they're still kind of the same person. Now, as I'm saying this, as a caveat, we are still kind of the same people and present in that kind of way. But what I mean is they still live in the same storyline that they were living in 5 years ago. That's something that me and you are not doing. So we're not trying to paint it as something which is basically we're not trying to sell it. Like as like some like oh like you become basically like it's like Clark Kent going to Superman. It is kind of like that internally, but it's not, it's much more subtle than that. However, when you look through the frame of reality, is this person still living in the same storyline that they were 5 years ago? Suddenly it becomes super clear. The people who are really on this path and the people that aren't. Now, this is not something to develop superiority about because it's harmful to your own progress. And second of all, it's impersonal. You didn't choose to get these mentors. You didn't choose to listen to these resources, to use these resources for when you do listen to these resources for it to actually click and something for you to be interested in. These were not decisions that you made. Okay. So there's no superiority here at all. But if someone has never really had an internal breakthrough, then the process of that internal breakthrough is something which they will have innocence around. Innocence is a lack of experience in something. So, the same way that someone can have the best mindset of their life and be in the best shape of their life, but if they're a white belt in jiu-jitsu entering the black belt world championships, there is an innocence there where they will not be able to compete because they don't have the skill set. This isn't a question of self-esteem. This isn't a question of autonomy, of having the initiation, of having the confidence. These are all cool things and relevant things to work on, but there is a skill set which they are lacking, a skill set of at least a decade. So they've got some work to do. It's
Yeah.
the same thing for internal progress, internal work, which again is why I always make sure when someone jumps on, people have the finances to stay around for a few months. If they don't, I say it's best for you to save your money and maybe go to somebody else who's doing this, this, and this. I don't say that because usually that means they do waste their money with those people. Just a fact from what I've seen from my anecdotal experience. Because at the start, sometimes there is a skill that has to be learned. Oh, wait, this is how you actually do it. This is not something mystical or magical. There is actually a thought pattern that's not located in a physical area, but it's definitely inside of my ecosystem, which is coloring my whole reality of life. You need to get comfortable with that. And you need to get comfortable with the process of letting that go. Now, here's the thing. This can all happen within a session because some people are really ready for it. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But once that first breakthrough is made, the same way that I said the other breakthrough is a big turning point, I would actually say this is the bigger turning point. When the first breakthrough is truly made, and introject, which is a belief that we have taken from the external world into ourselves, is actually let go of, and there's nothing left. That is when the coaching really kicks off. Because now they have evidence, experience that way I can actually make not just incremental change, but transformational change. But it's an innocence thing sometimes at the beginning, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's part of our job, right? That's just part of the game.
Yeah. And on a content level, for an example, for people that are following along, but just
Yeah.
want something a little bit more tangible, what can that look like? What kind of transformational change really mean?
Transformational change is incremental change. Again, a distinction which got put into words by Pierre, my mentor, one of my mentors. But it's also something that Kim Barter talked about without talking about, basically. That's basically his method that we learn. Kim Barter is like been in the psychotherapy game for 30 years, fully licensed psychotherapist, who has been our latest mentor when it comes to internal healing, internal shadow work. Incremental change is what most coaches, therapists offer. And it's when we just change 1% and issue 1% every day. This is why sometimes it can take people 10 years to solve one issue. Now, I need to be very careful because, well, yes, the method and the coach matters a lot. What also matters is the student. Sometimes it just takes a bit longer, right? Like if we go back to my example, when it was around socializing, it just took me a bit longer than it took Cameron. We were getting the same level of coaching, same level of detail. I was actually getting more, to be honest, especially in the later half. It just
Mm.
took me a little bit longer because I just had more knots to untie. And the knots that I did have to untie were more tight due to the
Yeah.
experiences I had growing up and also the way that I constructed those experiences afterwards in my mind. So that's why it's a symbiotic process between mentee and mentor.
Mm.
So it takes a little bit. So sometimes it can take a little bit longer. Sometimes change has to be a bit more incremental. But if the model of your healing, of your coaching, of your mentoring is incremental in its nature, it takes away any possibility of transformational change. Now, when you're mentoring or coaching, like Cameron's, is oriented around the principle that transformational change not only is possible, but it's also very natural. What it means is you can solve decades long problems or more, or year long problems in the space of a few short months or even a few short sessions. Now, that's
Yeah.
not to say that it's always like that. Sometimes it does take a bit longer, like I said, with my issues around socializing.
Mm.
Sometimes it does, and that's just how it goes. But if the model is transformational change, it's kind of like that analogy where if you shoot for the stars, you'll end up by the moon,
Yeah.
right? But if
Yeah.
you're shooting for the ceiling, I'm a short guy, you don't actually touch the ceiling, right? You can't even touch that. It's kind of like that, but it has to be done in the model and the framework of how somebody is coaching and mentoring. So if you guys are looking for somebody, then you have to see, is that something which is innately baked into their system? Like, does that actually let's say the best case scenario does happen. Are they actually able to do that, to facilitate that? Or is their model predicated on just incremental change, which is fine, but that's the limit of how they're going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And do you know what was funny is when I'm hearing you speak about people who maybe have a few knots to untie. I don't know
Hmm.
if you've noticed it, but I've noticed it. The people who have a little bit longer but they're patient,
Yeah,
they tend to actually go almost even further.
yeah,
Not
they do.
because the original people who were maybe a bit faster couldn't, but
Yeah,
because it's almost like, and we could even see it karmically, like there's something about that that is part of our path. There's a bit more
yeah,
richness for us that maybe there
yeah,
was another person. Maybe for another person that was just a step, but for us that was a road.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
we often I've seen like the real masters and skilled people weren't
They always
always the
had a tough
fast
time at the
people. They
beginning.
always
Oh,
tough.
yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean,
There is sometimes talent, obviously,
yeah,
that we can't
yeah.
discount. But I would say that's much, much rarer for someone to just be
Mm,
really talented and really good at something, you know?
yeah,
Now, obviously, the combination that it gets the grades is someone who is talented but also had a lot of knots, right?
yeah,
That's the real
yeah.
sweet spot. Because it's almost like pulling back a bowstring. If something
Mm,
has a lot of tension, you have to put much more effort to pull that back, and it takes
yeah,
longer and more strength. But once you let go, the arrow goes much faster. But for someone who is much easier for, they don't have to put that much effort in,
yeah,
right? So when they take it back, the arrow goes not as fast and not as strong and not as true. So it is actually a phenomenon which um, is very interesting to observe. Yeah.
yeah. And so I think we'll finish just with one more thing that I'm curious about. And that's just, we're looking forward to 2026.
Yes,
And I
we
don't
are.
really experience reality that much in this way of like what I'm going to be doing next year or whatever. But
Yeah, that's
is there
true.
anything that you're curious about or you have an intention for moving into 2026? Is there anything that's really alive for you about that year?
It's going to be a disappointing answer, but no, just the same as I have
Yeah,
now. Other than maybe just going deeper into the stuff that I'm already going deeper into.
yeah,
You know, what about you?
yeah. I'm asking the question because it seems like a good question to ask to
Yeah,
finish the podcast on. But
yeah.
also, I'm thinking, how would I even answer it?
And the monks were
And
not satisfied and delighted in the
they
Blessed
they
One's
were not.
words.
See, but it's podcast one, so that's okay.
That's right. Oh, that's right.
Um,
Yeah, so we get to
yeah,
say
see,
that.
that's a
Oh, what
really
a
niche
what
joke.
a common joke that everyone's gonna get. Wow, these guys are so funny, aren't they?
You
Oh
know,
my God.
I'll send it to Pierre and he'll laugh, and that will be enough.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, this
The
poor
person that we
guy that
really
we've
want to laugh
mentioned
is the
so
guy that
much.
we are paying money to mentor us, not the other way around.
That's right. That's right. This client acquisition system is terrible, but that's okay.
Yeah, right. I might as well. Right. Well, basically, okay, this is going to sound so incredibly lame, but the joke is in the Majima Nikaya, it always ends in the same way. The suttas are always written in a very repetitive way, so it goes into your mind better, the lessons, right? It's not supposed to be read in a necessarily, although it does have a weird charisma, the stories, it's written in a very repetitive way so that we understand the lessons. And so every single sutta ends with, and the monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words, the Blessed One being the Buddha. And no, we are not referring to ourselves in third person as the Blessed One, right? This is just, or maybe
Speak,
Cameron is, I don't
speak
know.
for yourself.
But the funny one is in the first sutta, and there's like 100 over 150 suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya. Sutta being like a gospel, or not a gospel, is like a story, like a psalm or something. If you want to make the analogy to Christianity, the end of the first Majjhima Nikaya sutta is it throws a wrench in the whole system. It says, and the Blessed One were, and then the monks were not satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. And this is the first podcast of Cameron. So, as okay, yeah, I'll see
Yeah.
myself out the door. But that's basically the that's basically the joke that me and Cameron are
Yeah.
hysterically laughing about.
Yeah. See, we're both just massive nerds. That's
Just
okay.
two
Maybe
comedy
some.
geniuses,
That's
you
right.
know.
That's right.
Let's put this in the comedy podcast section of
We
Spotify.
definitely next to Ricky Gervais, perfect.
Easy.
So what I will finish with then is I imagine if someone's made it this far and they've got through our jokes, there's a good
Yeah.
chance they may want to find you. They may possibly want to take a next step or even work with you. Where
Yeah.
can people find you? We'll put links in the description. But how is the best place for them to meet you to get in contact?
So you can find me on my channel, Self-Actualization Systems, which Cameron will kindly put in the description link below. What I actually have, I have a one-on-one link, obviously, which is the easiest way to get in touch with me because I get, your email. I can message you via email. And we can set up just a very chill 20-minute, 30-minute chat, which is around the coaching. It's not like a chat, like a catch up. It's more to say, I'm interested in doing one-on-one. What you have in store, basically. It's no hard sales, no hard selling, nothing like that. I like to do because I don't like to do that. It's a very informal getting to know you chat and then getting to know my coaching, getting to know me, and then seeing what's the next best step forward. But what I do have actually is that product which I was talking about, the most practical shadow work guide on the internet. It's completely free. Like I said, I was going to charge probably around 300 to 500 euro for it. I ended up making it free, and that has everything you need to know. So if you're not quite ready for one-on-one work, but you still want to be able to do really effective inner healing on yourself, then that is where I would direct you. Um, Problem is in classic Mr. Zarita fashion, and yes, I did refer to myself in the third person. Ironically, not unironically, is that I need to have a landing page for that. But what you can do is you can leave a comment on YouTube, and I will just send you the link straight away. Basically, you just say, "Hey, Aaron, interested in the free product? where is it? But hopefully by that time I should have a landing page. I just need to figure out how to do that because technology is not exactly my greatest strength. Um, because that way I can, click your email. We have a way of communicating that way, and you get the product for free, essentially. So that's the best way to get in touch with me.
Beautiful. So I'll invite just anyone who resonates with Aaron to get in touch with him in one of these three ways, either just really absorbing the richness of his YouTube channel, getting in contact for a one-on-one,
Hmm.
or going through this product, which you can do just by reaching out to him, or maybe I'll be a landing page by the time this comes out. And so I'd like to finish it there just by sharing appreciation for you coming here and actually being the first
Thank you so
one. And I'm
much.
really glad that it's you, a real
Yeah,
great
makes
friend of
sense, doesn't
mine
it?
and
Yeah,
someone that I really appreciate. So I'm glad you're here
yeah. I
and
appreciate you as
excited
well.
for
It's been too
people.
long.
Yeah,
See each other soon in person, hopefully.
yeah, wonderful.